Coming up today here on the Raiders Report, NFL players on the trade block that the Las Vegas Raiders should consider trading for. I'm Mitchell Renz, host of the Raiders Report, and the big thing that I really want to get across to everybody, I'm somebody that likes to buy low. Growing up when I was a kid, my mom used to take me to yard sale after yard sale after yard sale. Why? Because we knew we could get something cheap, and that's what I'm trying to do here. We got 10 players that I think could help out this Las Vegas Raiders team that we could get cheap right now that are on the block. Before I get into these 10 guys, though, how about this? This is a show built on the backs of Raider Nation, or maybe my front. I don't know. Shout out to Galgos. Name a player you want the Raiders to trade for down in the comment sections. I look at every single comment. I go in every single video, and I see what you guys are saying. I want to know if the Raiders made a blockbuster trade, because I'm recording this video on August 1st, and there's been a lot of buzz around Brandon Aiyuk potentially getting dealt. A lot of buzz around blockbuster trade going down today. Could it be the Raiders? I don't really think so. Name a player you want the Raiders to trade for. So right now, as it stands, the current salary cap for the Silver and Black is $34.5 million. We got a few extra dollars in there, the whole Michael Gallup retiring thing, and we're sitting right now at about 6th in the NFL in salary cap dollars. In this show, I'm targeting needs, I'm targeting players at a value, and I'm also going to explain how much it would cost to trade for each of those players. I do the Raiders Report show at Chat Sports, and I think for the people that are watching the show, they're like, you know what? That guy knows a little bit, at least, about the Silver and Black. So what I did is I asked hosts from other teams. I also looked at reports from beat reporters, and I said, taking all the information that I got, and I put it into what I think that would cost each player in a trade. So the first player coming up here is James Bradberry, and I know some of y'all get mad when I talk about James Bradberry, but think of it like this. Think of it as if Brandon Facyson is hurt, could you find a replacement for Facyson at a cheap value at $1.2 million, because that's what it would cost to get him. He has experience playing in Patrick Graham's system, and if you can just add a veteran. I'm not saying I'm adding James Bradberry to be a starter, but he could at least compete with Ja'Cory and Bennett, because if Fayson's banged up, I want more competition in that cornerback room. Philly drafted Quinion Mitchell, and they drafted Cooper DeJean, so Bradberry could honestly get cut because his salary cap with Philadelphia is $12 million this season. But if the Raiders trade for him, Philly eats that money, and then they at least get something in return, and the Raiders only have to pay $1.2, and he has zero money guaranteed in 2025. Now, I asked our Eagles host here, who was also at my bachelor party, how much would it cost to trade and go get James Bradberry? He literally told me he's like, 7th round pick, and he's yours. That's all it's going to end up costing, because Philadelphia wants to move on from him. He's coming off a really bad year. I'm not going to lie to y'all. He was bad last season. But you know what? He was also very, very good in 2022. He was also really good with Marcus Epps. And when you look at that entire Philadelphia Eagles defense, they took a big step back. I'm talking big step back once Marcus Epps left. Who knows? Maybe Patrick Graham, Marcus Epps. You get your 4th cornerback here in James Bradberry at $1.2 million. I really don't think it's that bad of a value. Let's go to another name here, and I wish I could moonwalk, because I'm going to go with Michael Jackson from the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle drafted 2 corners, and they got a brand new regime. Right now, the 2 corners that you could potentially think about is Mike Jackson, also Trey Brown. Could be an option, again, if Brandon Facyson is legitimately injured, because Ja'Cory's been getting a lot of these 1 reps, and I want more competition in the cornerback room. If the Raiders end up trading for him, it's only going to cost you $1.1 million in 2024, and he's a big physical corner. And that's what the Raiders, I think, are looking for. He had a good season last year, according to PFF, over a 70 coverage grade, which is obviously something that I look for. But he brings that physicality. And if we're going to go out and we're going to trade for somebody at the cornerback position, I need somebody that has that physicality, because the Raiders obviously value Brandon Facyson, a little bit of an older player, and brings the toughness that this defense wants. That's like Michael Jackson does the exact same thing for Seattle. Could we potentially get him cheap over here for the Las Vegas Raiders? I can't promise you a Raiders trade's going to happen. I can't promise you that any big-time deal is going to happen. But what I can promise you this, if the Raiders make a trade, we're going live. Subscribe and turn on those notifications. Just like last year, I promised you, if the Raiders fire Josh McDaniels, I'm going to go live for 24 hours. Guess what? We went live for 26 hours. You could say what you want. We got a commitment to excellence here at the Raiders Report, and I'm going to bring it every single day. My question is, if the trade happens, who's partying with me? Let's go to the next one up here on today's show, and it's going to be Matthew Judon, who currently right now is seeking a new contract and sitting out of camp with the Patriots recently. There was a video that was going viral of Gerard Mayo going over to Matthew Judon. I want to say this happened on Tuesday. Those two had a conversation, and Judon literally walked off the practice field. He wasn't practicing. He was sitting on the sideline, walked off, went into the locker room. Next day, skips practice and, posted a picture of him playing, video games while the Patriots were practicing. This is clearly not a good situation right now, and I know that he wants a brand new contract. If the Raiders were to trade for him right now, okay, they would owe him $6.5 million in 2024, and he would be a free agent in 2025. I'll admit, if they ended up trading for him, you might have to give him a brand new contract. Maybe you give him a 2-year extension, a 1-year extension. It's just something to think about. But I do think that this could be an option for the Raiders in case you're unable to bring back Malcolm Koonce next offseason, if Tyree Wilson isn't able to take that next step. And it does give you depth because the Raiders need some extra depth after Tyree, Malcolm, and Mad Max. No disrespect to Janarius Robinson. No disrespect to Charles Snowden, who's having himself a good camp. You need that extra body. And Judon could potentially be that guy. I will admit this, though. And in terms of all the players that I'm going to show you today, this guy might be the most expensive. The trade value, according to our Patriots person here at Chat Sports, is saying it's going to be around, he told me, 4th or a 5th round pick. So 4th or 5th round pick. I think it's going to be closer to a 5th, but he does have experience. He's a good veteran presence coming off a little bit of a down year. But I'll also say this. How bad the Patriots were last season, on that defense, they had the wind sucked out of them. They had nothing going for them. That Patriots team looked like a team very similar to the way that the Raiders looked with Josh McDaniels. Defeated, and they were done. Heck, Bill Belichick's out there hooking up with somebody a third of his age in the middle of, the week. You know what I mean? It was a different vibe in New England. Let's go to the next player, and quite frankly, I think out of all the players that I'm about to talk about, this would be the guy that I'd be probably one of the most fired up for the Raiders to get. It's Zaven Collins, and he is a versatile edge linebacker player. One best linebacker coming out of, or best defensive player coming out of Tulsa a few years ago. And I think for a lot of the OGs that watch this show know how much I like Zaven Collins, the athlete. Reminds me a lot of a player like Kyle Van Noy, a guy that can play linebacker, get after the quarterback, but can also drop back into coverage. And if there's one thing I've seen, Arizona Cardinals just don't use their athletes the right way. I know it kind of reminds me of a lesser version of Isaiah Simmons, but then also Arizona with some of these edge guys like a Hassan Reddick, they just don't use them right. If the Raiders were to trade for him, you would owe him $2.66 million in 2024, and he would be a free agent in 2025. The reason why I like this idea, 39 starts in 3 seasons with Arizona, but on top of that, though, I believe in Antonio Pierce. I believe in Patrick Graham. I believe in our entire coaching staff from top to bottom on that defense. And if you get a player that is as physically gifted as Zaven Collins, I'm on board for it. Quite frankly, I think it'd be a really, really good deal. It would probably cost the Raiders a 5th-round pick, though I've also seen some reports out there that Arizona might be willing to take a 6th. The Cardinals are going to be a team that wants to stock up draft picks for the following seasons to come. Zaven's a good player, but this is a regime that looks at him as going, he's here this year and he's gone next. So why not swoop in, bring in a player, somebody who I really do actually think could help out this Raiders defense for many, many years to come. Coming up next here on the show, players on the offensive side of the football that the Raiders could target. I got 6 names coming up here, and some of these are going to be some receivers. The last one, though, is going to be a little bit of an eye-popping name. Before I get into that, though, you know what else is eye-popping? When you see a ticket deal that you can't believe, almost too good to be true, well, that's what I get a lot when I go to Game Time. Now, you guys know that Chugs and I love using Game Time, and most recently, we were able to snag some tickets to the Home Run Derby. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code CHATSPORTS. That's CHATSPORTS. For $20 off. With the Raiders preseason and regular season right around the corner, Game Time is the perfect app for Raider Nation. I love their last-minute deals. I love their all-in pricing. I love the seat views, and I love that lowest price guaranteed. So, Nation, download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app, last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Let's go to the offensive side of the football now. We're going to look at Allan Lazard, and this is a name that I have thrown out multiple times, and this is somebody who, like, we always hear the Raiders and Jets are going to make a trade this offseason. If somebody actually wanted to put out some good content or like something that might actually happen, I think the most likely trade that happens between the Raiders and the Jets that involves a receiver is for this guy right here. Worked with Luke Getsy from 2019 to 21. Lazard is buried on the Jets depth chart. Was brought in there to be an extra guy for Rodgers, but the connection wasn't quite there. Is a downfield threat. And if the Raiders were to trade him, I'll admit, this is a little bit pricey. It's $10 million this upcoming season, but he's got no guaranteed money in 2025 and no money guaranteed in 2026. With $34.1 million, this one does make me a little uneasy. And quite frankly, I would almost want the Jets maybe to take on a little bit more of that deal. And if they did, like if the Jets said, hey, we'll take on $5 or $6 million of that contract. You guys only have to pay him $4 million if you give us a 5th-round pick. I think the Raiders would be a little bit more interested in that. But a 6th-round value for a player that had his career year best, like the best year he's ever had with Luke Getsy, with the Green Bay Packers. Like, to me, like that's at least something that I'm going to entertain because of that connection there and because he does also know this offense a little bit more. And you've even heard a guy like Davante Adams say, like, he's already retained 90% of the offense and he's able to be like that player coach, where I do think a guy like Allan Lazard could be a player similar to like the way Zack Collins impacted our offense a few years ago on the offensive side of the football. Can be a field stretcher, 6'5", 227 pounds. Allan Lazard is a name to keep in mind. Let's go to another name here on the show, and it's Alec Pierce. Pierce developed a nice connection with Minshew at the end of last season. You go back and you look at some of those numbers that Pierce put up, and him and Minshew's connection got better and better. I'll admit this, probably the only way I'm going to bring in Alec Pierce is if the Raiders make a decision and they go, Minshew's going to be the guy, and we want to go give him an extra target, because it's been pretty clear early on at camp that Trey Tucker and Aiden O'Connell have a connection, probably because they've been working together all offseason. But if Minshew's the guy, then could you bring in Pierce, who's 6'3", 211 pounds? The Colts also drafted A.D. Mitchell in round 2 this year. I want to say pick 52 overall. And if you go out and you trade for him, it's $1.3 million in 2024, and he doesn't have anything guaranteed in 2025. He's a young player, and he's a good athlete. Like, he's a good receiver and could be a good wide receiver 3, which when the Raiders had Michael Gallup retire, you got Trey Tucker, right? Like, you got Davante Adams, who's here. Then you got Jacoby Myers, who's here. And then you got Trey Tucker, who's here. And then there is a huge tier gap between your next receiver. Alec Pierce is right there with Trey Tucker, man. So the value that it would take to get him, because he's a little bit younger of a player, he's only in his 3rd year of his contract, I believe it's going to end up costing a 5th-round pick. 32 grabs, 514 yards last season. But you could see that he was able to take that next step a little bit with Gardner Minshew going out there, being able to do his thing. Also, obviously, having Jonathan Taylor out there definitely helps a little bit, as well. Before we get into some more players that the Raiders could potentially trade for, we're doing an event in North Carolina that I hope the nation pulls up for. Week 1 tee-off. If you want to be able to pull up, we are doing an event at Topgolf. We're also going to be doing an event for the Raiders watch party. So if you want to golf with Jeremy and I, Topgolf, Saturday, September 7th, the day before the Raiders take down the Chargers, go to chatsports.com/Topgolf, where you can get your tickets. You can get a few entries for your raffle. If you want to be able to hang out with us during our watch party when the Raiders take on the Chargers, like if you enjoy hanging out with the 100,000, 150,000 fans live on YouTube, well, you can also hang out with the 500-plus fans that we're going to have here. Chatsports.com/week1. It's free to attend. Tons of prizes, tons of giveaways, and if the Raiders score a touchdown and Nathan Wolf wants to pull up here on this show and cheer and celebrate with us, I'm down. I'm down to have a good time, and I'm down to be able to meet some people. That's what the show here is all about. Let's go to another name that I mentioned yesterday or 2 days ago on the show, Darius Slayton. Slayton wants a new contract receiver right now for the New York Giants, and the Giants drafted Malik Neighbors, plus they got Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, who they like both of those young players quite a bit. If the Raiders were to trade for him, it'd be $2.5 million in 2024, free agent in 2025. And this is a dude that's 6'1", 200 pounds, does have a relationship somewhat with Patrick Graham. Again, different sides of the football, but they were at least on the same team. It would end up costing the Raiders a 5th-round pick if they were to get a deal done like this. But, think about how bad the quarterback situation last season was for the New York Giants. Daniel Jones, Danny DeVito might have been one of the only teams that you could say might have had a worse situation than the Raiders. And he's still able to put up 50 for 770 and 4 touchdowns. This is also a team that's looking to recoup potentially a tight end. So, the Raiders have been a team that have been connected to the Giants and potentially trading a tight end to them, Harrison Bryant, I've heard. I don't think the Raiders are going to do it just because they like Harrison Bryant a lot, and we want to be able to run 2 tight end sets. But like Darius Slayton is a name to at least keep in mind. I will say this, though. If you do trade for him, you got to probably pay him. Like, he wants a new contract, so you trade him, and you'd have to give him an extension of 2-3 years on top of that. Let's go to another receiver here. This is Robert Woods for the Houston Texans. If you can't tell, I believe that the Raiders need to add, and they need to do it quick. You need to add more talent on offense at the wide receiver position to be able to help out with that tier break at your position. He's never had under 400 receiving yards in 11 seasons, which is kind of crazy. I will admit he is coming off a career worst year since he had that, I want to say, ACL injury with the Rams a few years ago. He's definitely taken a step back. Houston traded for Stephon Diggs earlier this season, and it would cost the Raiders $6.3 million in 2024, which is, a little bit on the pricier side for a receiver of Robert Woods' caliber. But, like, if it costs you a 7th-round pick, like, what do you have to lose, right? You're going to lose 6.3, but a 7th-round pick, if the Raiders are legitimately concerned, and I do think Woods would be a fun fit in this offense. He's not going to be the physical player, but, like, I do think would be a good comp to Trey Tucker, where Trey Tucker could be the wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. Robert Woods could be the wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. But we need to be able to add some extra talent, because if, God forbid, happens to anything to our top 3 receivers, and then you got to rely on DJ Turner, Jalen Guyton, or UDFA, and Tulu Griffin, or Keelan Doss. I like those names on my practice squad. Not DJ Turner's going to make the roster, but some of those other guys, man, like, they're practice squad guys, and that's okay to say. So I brought up 4 wide receivers. If you could pick one to trade for out of the receivers that you see up on screen right now, who would you trade for? Would you go with Allan Lazard, type AL? Would you go with Darius Slayton, type DS? Alec Pierce, type AP? Robert Woods, I want you to go with RW. Maybe it's the Raider in me, and maybe I'm just used to spamming Al. Hell, I do have it tatted on the back of my leg. If the Raiders are serious, okay, about finding another option that makes sense, it is going to cost money. I do think that Allan Lazard makes the most sense right now if you're trying to add somebody because he knows Luke Getsy. But out of all those names, the guy that I would legitimately want the most from a talent standpoint, it's Darius Slayton. I think Darius Slayton is the best combination of size, speed, fit in our offense. Yeah, you're going to have to pay him, but again, you might have to pay some players. The Raiders have the money to do it, and I think that they'd be able to do it. Let's go to an offensive lineman here in Larryborm, where the only reason why Borom's on this list is because if Las Vegas is seriously concerned that Colton Miller might not be ready, or if you're concerned that, Cody Whitehair's been getting worked in training camp, Dylan Parham hasn't been doing all that great either. Andres Pete's had some injury concerns. Jackson Powers-Johnson right now is banged up. Thayer Munford left practice the other day. He ended up coming back, but he had an injury. Borom is somebody that has played in Luke Getsy's offense. He can play offensive tackle and he can play offensive guard. And he's played with Luke Getsy the past 2 seasons and has a combined 939 snaps. It would cost the Raiders $3.1 million this season, and he would be a free agent in 2025. But, again, it's the Luke Getsy connection. It is just making sure that our offensive line isn't a big-time concern for us. And if the Raiders are concerned about the O-line, I do think Borom is at least a player to keep in mind. And according to our Bears guy here at Chat Sports, he is on the trade block. So the fact that he's on the trade block, the fact that the Raiders could potentially sweep in, he's a backup left tackle right now in Chicago, but he can play left, he can play right, he can play offensive guard. You can almost look at him as somebody as versatile as like a Jermaine Illuminor type of player. Let's go to the last one, and this is the one that's going to light some eyes up. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, DTR. The Browns have Deshaun Watson. They also signed Jameis Winston, and they also signed Tyler Huntley this offseason. So that means right now DTR is the 4th quarterback on the Cleveland Browns. And according to a source who covers the Browns here at Chat Sports, this team is unsure if he fits with what new offensive coordinator Kevin O'Connell, new head coach, Kevin Stefanski. Yeah, O'Connell's the head coach.
Kevin O'Connell's the head coach for the Vikings. Kevin Stefanski,
Kevin Stefanski
is the head
Mitch.
coach for the Browns.
Get it together, Mitch. This is all sorts of bad. But they're unsure if he's going to end up fitting. That's on me.
Ken Dorsey is the OC.
Ken Dorsey's the OC. I combined way too many names and I threw them in together. But this one would cost the Raiders $915K if you were to trade for him in 2024. And again, the only reason why you do this is because I've been asked probably more this week than I've ever been asked in my life, and I can't even believe it, of should the Raiders actually have Anthony Brown in contention to battle with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell? The answer to that is, I don't care who the quarterback is. I want it to be the best quarterback battle you could possibly have. But also, at the same time, if you are concerned about Aiden, if you are concerned about Gardner, if you want an athletic quarterback that did flash in the preseason last season, there is no doubt that he flashed in the preseason, had a few opportunities to start. Yeah, it didn't quite go the way that he was wanted, but he's a Las Vegas guy. And I think that connection out there, hell, I ran into Dorian Thompson-Robinson the last time I was out in Vegas. He's always out there. He lives out there. And if you can get him for a 7th-round pick, I think it would even be cheaper than that based off of what the Browns have at their quarterback roster. I'm just saying it adds extra competition to our quarterback room. But again, that's if you're legitimately scared of what Aiden and Gardner are currently doing. Those are all the players that I think the Raiders could trade for. The last player that I know I'm going to get asked about, because again, I am filming this show on August 1st. I don't see that the Raiders are trading for Brandon Aiyuk. I know he has the connections with Antonio Pierce, but I knew I wouldn't be able to do this show unless I talked about Aiyuk. There's been a lot of news. There's been a lot of rumors circulating that Aiyuk and the Niners aren't close to getting a deal. There's a video of Aiyuk dapping up John Lynch. There's a video of him dapping up Kyle Shanahan at practice, and there's a lot of some rumors circulating that a trade is going to go down. So if this video goes out on Friday, which it's going to go out on Friday, and this deal has already happened, don't hurt me, but this is why you should hit that subscribe button. It's why you should watch our live shows, because from what we understand at Chat Sports, Brandon Aiyuk's getting traded today, and it's going to be a wild thing if it does end up going down. So one more time here are the Raiders trade targets that I think AP and Telesco should at least be open to the idea of going out there, picking up the phone, and giving them a call. I got James Bradberry, Michael Jackson at corner, defensive end, Matthew Judon, linebacker, edge, all-around hybrid, and Zaven Collins. Allan Lazard at wide receiver, followed by Alec Pierce, Darius Slayton, Robert Woods, Larryborm, and then Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Reminder, if the Raiders trade for one of these players or any player this upcoming season, I will go live here on the Raiders Report.